Today I wanted to try something a little different. I really like watching the types of videos on YouTube where I can see how an artist has progressed throughout their journey. So what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a visual history of my art journey so far. What I wanted to start with showing you is my comfort zone. This is where I thought my art practice was going to go about 18 months ago. This is colored pencil, and you'll see here it's not quite finished. I wish I had have put the date that I started this, because I have slowly now and then done more and more of this, but I will tell you it's really hard for me to stay focused on one of these projects that takes a long time. I love so much being able to create details and blend colors, and I find this process so satisfying. But the frustrating part is it's still not finished. There's a little bit to go. And look how prolific I was after making this. Literally the only page in the sketchbook. And so about 18 months ago, I found an ad for an online art class called Modern Mixed Media by Laura Horn, who's an Australian artist. I saw the ad online and it looked like the opposite of everything that I've ever done with art. I saw that it was all about looseness and experimentation, and that is not something that I have gravitated towards or ever felt comfortable with. And to be fully transparent, I was in a total phase in my life of complete burnout. It was work related, and I had taken some time off work and trying to figure out how to find myself again and something positive to do for myself, to challenge my brain and to kind of start re-engaging in life a little bit. So I enrolled in Laura's class. It's a 6-week course, and I've never done abstract art before. This was the first exercise I did. And whilst I think this is fine, and I did have fun making it, the one thing I realized very quickly was abstract art was super hard, which was unexpected for me because, as you saw, I can draw and I can control things quite well. I really struggled with how do you compose something when you don't have a realistic subject matter to rely on. I had no clue where to start doing this kind of abstract art. So immediately I felt out of my comfort zone, but I was also excited by that because I hadn't been out of my comfort zone in a long time, especially creatively. And I will say, I also didn't believe that I was a creative person. And maybe you'd be surprised by that, but I thought that I've always thought of myself, well, I can draw, I can make things look really nice, but I can't come up with ideas on my own. And so this was a rude awakening to my system. And so I wanted to just show you some examples of things I did in that first Modern Mixed Media class. Laura does have a little bit of a botanical focus in that class. And so I was starting out just grabbing some leaves from my garden and experimenting with watercolor for the first time. I think these were using the Kuretake Japanese watercolors, and you've said that I have a video swatching that same set. So this is probably the first time I used those. This was experimenting with line work and dots, which is something I really did like to do just in doodling when I was young. More leaves here, and they're not something I'd really ever spent any time drawing or doodling. And so even this was a little bit outside of my comfort zone. It's experimenting with different color palettes. I wasn't used to choosing colors. What I started doing, you've probably seen in those Kuretake paint sets, they just have, rows and columns of paints, and I would just choose 3 or 4 that were or 5 here that were all next to each other and be like, okay, I'm going to use those 5 and let's see how they work together. And so I really didn't know what I was doing, and it felt uncomfortable, but it also really did start freeing me up and trying to be not too judgy. And I'll come back to this sketchbook because that's the last of the pages from that Modern Mixed Media class. I also did a couple of pieces in that first class. So it's using those Kuretake paints, and I believe these are Neocolor crayons that I bought for the class. So that's where some of this line work is. And then Posca markers for the detail and mark making. And I enjoyed these, but gee, I struggled. You can see here my pull towards really wanting to stick with detailed things, and also trying to explore this messiness that I really didn't feel like I'd had permission to do before. As a struggling perfectionist my whole life, this type of art satiated those perfectionist tendencies. And so trying to loosen up was a real struggle for me. I enjoyed it, but I spent probably too much time. This was the third and actually final piece I made in the first try at that modern mixed media class. And I stopped after that. And I don't fully recall why. I know I was really struggling with, how do I find the right botanical to put on here? How do I find something that's really interesting that hasn't been done before? So I was really excited about this. But it felt like something was missing. I didn't know what my style was. I thought these were interesting and they were fine, and I got to experiment with some gold leaf. So I learned a little bit about watercolor, about mixed media supplies, but then I stopped the course and picked it up again in the next cohort that was starting 6 months later. And my goal for that one was to be prolific, which was the opposite of what I had been the first time, and just make. And so I have a few sketchbooks that I had going at once, because in my mission to be prolific, I was often working on multiple things at one time. First day retaking this class, so I'm calling this Modern Mixed Media Round 2. I had 3 sketchbooks on the go in my very first day, and I felt so free. I was using acrylic inks that were very new to me. I was using charcoal. There's some oil pastel here, definitely Posca markers. And I felt like something in me came alive when I did this first batch for the first week's assignments in that second round of Modern Mixed Media. And I was determined to finish the class this time and not quit, and try to keep being prolific. So I'm just going to flick through some of these things that I did in the second round, where I started really trying to get more comfortable with just playing. Here's some more acrylics with different tools, practicing washes, and then drawing over top of them. And then not being super precious. Initially, I just had these white leaves on here. And then I started using these pages to experiment on, because I think the other thing that taking that class taught me was not to be too precious. So that was Modern Mixed Media in that sketchbook. In this one, this was a page all using Neocolors and activating them to take on watercolor characteristics, with some acrylic paint over top, and then Neocolor again, drawing marks over top. And I started here labeling what I was doing so I could remember, because I would say, if I didn't have this label here, I would not remember that these were Neocolors that I did this with underneath. I resisted doing that for so long, because it's like I wanted each page to be a work of art or something. And if I write on them, well, that's going to ruin it. And this is where I started to change my mindset a little bit, in terms of this is for learning. I'll come back to the sketchbook. There's some more, so here's some more Modern Mixed Media in that second round. This is playing with some new Daniel Smith watercolor paints that I had. And I did this beautiful background underneath. I loved it so much, and such bright colors. And then I was stuck. And I didn't know what to do next. And I thought, what's something really bold I can do to shake it up? And so I painted these huge black circles over it, which is not something that the old me would have done. And then some mark making over top with some Poscas. But I really felt this renewed freedom. So let me show you, again, just in the sheer quantity of things I created. Right, you are. I wanted to do an art journey. There's so much here. And so I'm hoping that you enjoy seeing these progressions to see kind of the art of the possible for you as well, if you are restarting an art journey. So I'm just going to flick through these relatively quickly, but in the class we were playing with just being super loose on big sheets of paper with different tools and then cutting them up to find different compositions. So all of these pieces that I just showed you were all from one larger sheet of paper. And I thought that was really fun and freeing. And then we also did this exercise with Laura called Windows of Possibility. And we could choose a color and just use different tools. This is a Stabilo oil pencil. These are acrylic inks. Experiment with mark making. I think this is some gouache with charcoal over top, and here's some more inks, but using different ways to apply it. And so I really started to embrace being a little bit more experimental, where the first time I took it, I felt really tight, and I kind of had to force myself to retake it and give it a better shot. This one I was super happy with, and I would say it's not my style, or rather I don't want it to be my style, because although this wasn't a copy of any of Laura's examples, it definitely has some of her style in it. But where I think this one had success and where I'd struggled in some of the earlier examples I showed you was I felt like I really had trouble leaving enough white space in paintings. And choosing too many colors. And so this was an intentional practice to limit my color palette, to save more white space and to simplify. And I was really happy with the way that turned out. Now here's one that's got a lot more different types of media in it. I hated this one when I was doing it. She wanted us to practice circle compositions, and there are so many layers on this. You can see watercolor under here, and I think this is Inktense pencil. There's acrylic paints that I've stamped on with bubble wrap or used catalyst tools. And where I really didn't like where it was going, because it felt too pretty for me, I like where it ended up. This one, it just felt, I think this was my first foray into trying to do something really messy and interesting with lots of layers. This one again, didn't love, and a lot of layers, and I felt like I was overdoing it and didn't leave enough white space. And so I've put acrylic over top of the watercolors underneath to try to put in some more balance of lights and darks. I don't love it, but I learned a lot from this. And then you can see me here really going after more white space. So this one is mostly watercolors, probably with either Inktense pencil or Neocolor crayons, and then some Posca over top. But again, a limited color palette and lots of white space, which is what I was focusing on. Not my style necessarily. And I kind of quit trying to go after a style. I just wanted to practice techniques and composing things and how to choose colors. But I will say throughout this journey, and I hope you'll start to see it, I have certainly felt like in going through this kind of archive, if you will, of things, I can slowly start to see a style evolving. And I will say I'm not married to it. I just have grown to love experimenting. I'm not perfect at keeping that mindset. This is an exercise straight from Laura's Modern Mixed Media class, or this is still from there, but this is definitely following more of her style and a prescribed exercise. I don't love this, but it was helpful to make it just to understand how to compose and how to put big things and small things and different types of shapes and marks. I've got splatters here. If you're taking a class or following exercises in a book, even if you don't like the look of them, what I have found is they're super helpful to just kind of learn and almost be detached from the result because it's not something I would have put up on my wall ever, but it let me practice without that emotional attachment. Here's again, these were exercises in repetition from her class. Again, don't love it. I don't know that I even really love the colors, but again, just playing with choosing colors and shapes. This one definitely inspired by one of Laura's exercises directly, but compared to hers, I limited the color palette even more and was trying to be quite loose with how I drew these. I think I might have used a skewer for these like finer lines that are quite messy, just to try to find ways to relinquish control. So I don't hate this one. Again, I wouldn't choose to do it, but I learned a lot and it was kind of fun. These were ones where I felt like I was trying to really find my style a bit more. This is watercolors and Posca with some charcoal. My day job is in engineering, and so I was starting to experiment with more geometric shapes in these. This is watercolors and acrylic inks. And then I went bigger. So I'm going to just zoom out a little bit. So I was much more prolific in this round. And I haven't found all my pieces, but here's two of my bigger examples of what I was doing. I'm not super excited about the composition. I don't hate them. I find them kind of interesting, a little busy, but again, just great learning pieces. And I keep all of these in a folder that I can flick through when I need to. But that was the modern mixed media class, and going through it twice or 1.5 times is what I felt was the thing that really started to open up playing with art materials for me. So the next thing I did after I finished the modern mixed media class is I decided to do the 100-day project. And because I was enjoying being quite loose in sketchbooks, I decided for my 100-day project, and this is last year, 2024, that I was going to do 100 days of sketchbook play. My goal was to do it every day, but I was also trying to be compassionate with myself, and if I needed to skip days, so inks, acrylic inks, these are watercolors. If I needed to skip days, that's okay. Sometimes I did a couple of pages in one day, but I mostly just wanted to learn and have fun. I think these are probably a combination of Kuretake watercolors and Daniel Smith with maybe Inktense or charcoal. I should have written notes on here, but just trying to have fun with my art materials and play with compositions and color palettes. These pages are using Artgraph Taylor's chalks in the earth colors that I found quite interesting, just drawing directly with those. Again, I don't think any of these are masterpieces, but my goal was having fun and loosening up and trying to find me and what I enjoyed. So this is all still the 100-day project. And I would highly recommend trying the 100-day project if you're trying to establish an art practice, if you're trying to figure out what you like, because it's a way where, you have to do something. And so you just need to, some days you just like, well, I guess I'll pick these colors and figure it out. So this is the next sketchbook that I was using. So I used a variety of sketchbooks for the 100-day project. And I started playing, so I was playing with some more color palettes here. Then I started playing with some acrylics as well. And not exclusively. So I think this one's all acrylics. This is watercolors and acrylic inks. Again, just experimenting with color palettes and mark making. I don't necessarily love these. I find them kind of interesting, but it was really just part of the sketchbook play that I felt met my intent for the 100-day project of 100 days of sketchbook play. Here's where I've started keeping notes again on what colors I used, and here even why I chose them. Here I've got Daniel Smith quinacridone violet, quinacridone coral, buff titanium, and a pinch of phthalo green blue shade to neutralize. If I didn't have that note there, I would never know that I had some phthalo green in here to neutralize the pinks and purpley colors. And so, yay to the value of keeping notes on your pages as you're experimenting. So here's where I start doing, I think this is maybe some neo colors with acrylic over the top. Really just trying to experiment, like geometric, botanicals. These are pages of just kind of leftover paints that I start playing with because I hate to waste paints. And so you'll probably see a theme here of me using leftover paints a lot to start new pages for next time. So here's more of the 100-day project in different sketchbooks. This one doesn't have very many, but this is where I got some Stabilo woodies and was starting to experiment in different ways to represent shapes and play with abstract compositions. I think these ones are a combination of acrylics and Stabilo woodies. Here I was trying to get like a rust-like texture. That was super fun. More Stabilo woodies, playing with geometric shapes again. This one was a really quick sketch that I was trying to do. One, to loosen up, and two, because I have this high-level goal of wanting to create art based on travel photos that I've taken, not just over recent years, but over decades, to be honest, of traveling. Here's where you can see I'm really starting to let go of having pretty sketchbook pages. I got a new fountain pen for my birthday last year, and I was very excited about it, and I wanted to try different ways of using it. The old Renee would have never wanted to waste sketchbook pages on this, but now I'm learning just to use my sketchbook as a safe place. So color swatches from, these are Derwent drawing pencils. Here's me doing color mixing, and this is while I was camping, I believe, on a camping trip, and I had a handful of Neocolor 2 crayons, and I was playing with color mixing though, so I'll zoom in a little bit, and trying to write down the recipes of blending those colors together. And I'll show you, or coming up in a couple of pages, you'll see what I was trying to blend colors for. This is using a Caran d'Ache gouache set that comes in pans. The first time I was using it, so I painted it out, not in a particularly beautiful or neat or detailed way, just to remember the colors and to see what they looked like. So a different method of swatching. And here playing with, I feel like my engineering brain is definitely coming out for this page, but definitely limited palette here again, and just playing with different lines and marks and compositions. Completely different here. This is all, I think this is a combination of Neocolors and the Caran d'Ache gouache, and playing with using like a doodle to start, much like I did in my YouTube video just before this one. Here's why I was playing with these Neocolor swatches and color mixing, is because I wanted to do intuitive, semi-abstract-ish version of thinking about the Oregon coast and all of the kind of rocky outcrops there and the water splashing against it. So I didn't have a photo for this, but it was really fun playing with it. And I'll tell you, gee, it looked ugly at some of the early phases, and I wish I had have taken progress photos of this. But just layering and layering between the Caran d'Ache gouache and the Neocolors and playing around with different marks, that this is something that I dearly want to experiment with more. If you're interested in seeing things like this, let me know, and that'll kind of force me to put on my big girl pants and be brave, because these are a little intimidating for me to make some more. But again, this was continuing my 100-day project. And then because I was enjoying playing with acrylic, so this is still 100-day project and another sketchbook, more swatches here. So swatching, not a bad thing. Here's where I really started playing with how do I create really interesting abstracts with acrylic paints and using different tools and layering that you can do in acrylics that you can't really do in watercolors, just to experiment. And some of the pages I really liked, like I think when I first did this one, I was like, yes, I love this. I love the effects. This is what I had dreamed of being able to figure out. And then I just kept trying to push and make different textures and use different colors. I'm not a pink girl, but I forced myself to use some, I think it's fluorescent magenta there. I was trying to get messy and play with brush strokes. This one I really loved as well. I loved the color palette in this, and also it's, kind of geometric, but then also, just some random more organic shapes and mark making. So I really loved that at the time and continued playing a little bit with some of those concepts. Here is where I started to get really messy. And so I'd often start, it probably has these warm colors underneath because if I had leftover paint, I would start the next page of it. After this dried, I would start the next page and use up the leftover paint and then leave it until the next day and start layering over that. This felt crazy to me at the time, and when I was looking at it earlier today before the video, I saw it with a lot more compassion and curiosity, because that's something that I've been really trying to harness in the last 6 or so months, is how to let go and be kind of unapologetically messy in some of my art. But I had a lot of fun doing these acrylic pages. I think what I liked about them, sometimes I would feel a little bit frustrated, like, oh, I wish I had done these on, let me go back here for a second. I wish I had done these on a piece of paper, because what if I want to frame it, or what if I want to sell it one day? But I think forcing myself to use the sketchbook in the 100-day project forced me to not have to think about, can I create monetary value out of this? Because if I can't, then it's not productive. That's the mindset that I adopted very quickly when I started making art. So this sketchbook project kind of forced me out of this, because I'm not going to be able to tear pages out of here and sell them. And it helped me kind of release that pressure and expectation and just start playing. This page here, I had a lot of fun with and was kind of really in flow and different ways to apply and layer the paint, and was like channeling big rock walls that I'd seen when hiking in Utah and things like that. But then I couldn't look at it after, which probably sounds really weird, but coming from a person who makes stuff like this, who has traditionally made stuff like this a lot of my life, to something like this, it made me deeply uncomfortable to see it. But there was just something about it that simultaneously excited me and like grossed me out. And now I find it more interesting to look at and don't have any problems with that. But I remember at the time just feeling super awkward about it. So you can see I went back to like neat geometric things after some of this craziness, because I felt like I was a bit more in control. So this is a battle that I have internally a lot. Just this back and forth of messy, here you go, trying again, being really messy and kind of loving it and having fun with it, and then not being able to look at it and not being able to help but think, my mum would never have put this, nothing against my mum, I love her dearly, she would never have put this on the fridge when I was a kid, let alone as a woman in her 40s making this. But it felt like there was some energy I needed to get out and experiment with, and the sketchbook is a safe place to do that. So I resisted the urge to paint over these. I could have painted over all of these, this one, this one, this one, but I've left them in there, and I'm so glad I did now. It's why I try not to throw any of my art away, because I feel like there are lessons that I learn from these by looking back, and there are clues as to what kind of art I want to make now. So you can see I was really getting into the acrylics. There's a lot of pages here, a lot more than in the watercolor ones, where I kind of just went on this massive exploration of abstract acrylic painting and started to really, really love it. You see, now I'm starting to embrace like more brush strokes and kind of messiness and looseness. This is experimenting with being able to paint watercolor over acrylic paint using different grounds. So this is fiber paste. I didn't put any on here. This is straight on acrylic paint. This is over a pastel ground, and this is over an absorbent ground, to see the different ways that they work. So I'll probably go back to that at some point and experiment a little bit more with watercolors over acrylics, which is not something that I don't think is commonly done, but yeah. There's this side of me. Here's another page of messiness, but using leftover paint and kind of smushing the pages together. So it's left over from this page here, smushing those pages together just to see what happens. I really liked this one too. I was really just trying to focus on like painterly marks and using big brushes and smaller brushes and holding the brushes from the end of it, from the top end, so I had less control. And something about this really inspired me. So you can see like my mental evolution in accepting different parts of me making art. So I think so. This sketchbook I actually nearly finished, which I'm super proud of myself and probably need to get back into. So that was my 100-day project. I'm going to go back to some Laura Horn classes now. This is from one of her first classes called The Melting Pot. What I decided to do when I started doing her mini classes was to try to replicate almost exactly what she was doing. I didn't freak out if I couldn't get it done exactly the same. But for the most part, I tried to copy what she was doing if I had similar-ish materials or similar-ish colors. And it took a little bit of pressure off, which I liked, and forced me to play in a way that I probably wouldn't have and make marks that I probably wouldn't have. But then I did something different. So I took a photo of it and I uploaded it into my Apple Notes app on my iPad. And I started brainstorming and writing in there, what do I like about this and what do I not like about it? Either in the way it looks or in how it felt to make it. Like, did I enjoy doing certain parts more than others, etc. And so from this, I created a bunch of art just from that thinking process. So this was the second one I made, limiting that color palette a little bit more, using wax resist. I think these were Neo colors that I put under here. Just going a little bit deeper on my own mark making. I would say it still borrows from Laura's style, but this was kind of a step in, okay, what would I make next if I were to choose? And then I went even deeper, I would say. So here's those two. And then I thought about, well, what are the actual marks that I like? And I really liked these rough circles with outlines of them, and I did them here. And I love the teal with the indigo. And so I went deeper on that in this one. Okay, I'm going to make big circles and just use the teal and indigo and see how that looks. And then I did another one. Okay, I'm just going to do the circles. And I used this, dipped it in acrylic ink, and did these like rough, scratchy outlines of the circles, which I really liked. Here's another pattern that I liked. This is from Laura's original, and I repeated it a little bit here, and then I created a whole page of this pattern. These were just super fun exercises that were all inspired by this original exercise here of Laura's. So this was using the same color of acrylic ink, and then spraying some water on and playing with really rough botanicals. And then another one using the acrylic ink, the same pen, and then putting some watercolor over top of it and mixing that in with some Posca. So you'll see, even with essentially copying the example from the instructor of the class, it inspired a lot more pieces. But to generate all of these additional pieces, I had to use this and really intentionally reflect on it and take notes down and put down my ideas for trying the different things, which basically set me free to create all these. So I really enjoyed that process. And from playing with those acrylic inks, here's more that came from it. I just started going crazy with acrylic inks, and I was making sometimes like 5 or more of these a night, after work or, after kiddo went to bed, and just playing with, how do they move on paper? What if I spray water on them? What if I put, a wet stripe next to it? Making scratches in the paper. And again, not trying to make finished pieces of art, but really just playing. And this is where I really started to feel myself really get into making art with my own energy and getting into flow state. And so I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly. You'll see some similar color palettes here to what I had done let me show you, remind you of this one. So you'll never know when you get inspired again. Still love this piece that I had done very quickly. Same color palette, revisited probably a couple of months later. I loved making all these and just thought they were so much fun. I had totally forgotten I made these. Like, oh, I love the energy in these. Let me tell you what they are. I often use a palette like this. It's just a kind of a big plate. All of these pieces here were from pressing the paper onto the plate. So this is dry, so it won't work. But just to show you, and I'd get the paper while this was all wet and just press down on here because it's about that same size and get some really interesting patterns. And so I kind of want to go back into these and start maybe playing with them a little bit, making some more layers or doing some mark making. But what I like about these is that like there's no control here. I can't control anything, which as a perfectionist can be really helpful. This one in particular, like I really like that. And I think it's because it's also got these dark colors here, and you can see there's granulation here that I really like, and just, you know, very light colors, warm colors combined with the black. This one's really interesting and I feel like I want to do something with it. But just some ideas for you on how to use up leftover paint versus just, you know, wiping it up or rinsing it down the drain. And then, so on that note, this is a pile here that's literally all done like that. This is all based on leftover paints. And I'll get the leftover paint and just start painting things. So not trying to make amazing works of art, but going back into them sometimes and doing extra mark making. You can see on here I've got some black fine point pen. This is white acrylic ink on here. This is probably Neocolor crayon, these orange marks, and you know, experimenting with different ways to apply the paint to get different marks with different brushes and applicators. But like, I thought this was pretty cool, something that I learned a lot from. The background of this was all leftover paints, just layered and layered, and then I tried to do like very loose versions, almost abstracted of like my own hand. These are all, again, just like pages and pages of leftover paint exercises, trying to play with value and with composition and with mark making. Literally just playing with leftover colors on my palette, seeing how they layer. And they're a fun way to unwind as well. I find I can just kind of get out of my head. This one I kind of like, and there's actually something on the other side too. I'll often do that. I don't know if there's more here. See, there's more here. I'll do them on the front and the backs of the paper sometimes, you know, because it's just practice. So this one's got a few layers that have started on here with some different kinds of marks. This one was, I got a new paint tube of Daniel Smith paint, Jadeite Genuine, and was just playing with swirls of that. And then this is indigo watercolor, I think. It's just another play day, and this white border is not painted on, by the way. That's the white of the paper. And so for me, this was a good exercise, and all these little blue bits here, I didn't use masking fluid. They were just exercises in brush control and noticing the shapes in between. Just a really fun exercise to learn how new paint works and looks, and how to, you know, playing with a composition, playing with shapes. And they're all just learning experiences. Here's more of me playing with that Jadeite Genuine. It's a pretty cool paint. You can see, hopefully it's got some bright greens in it and some black, and then you'll see the bright green on the edges where there's been lots of water. It's a cool paint. And I'll go through these pretty quickly. All just, you know, again, not works of art, but just me playing with compositions with leftover paint, different marks, different shapes, how to layer things, and really just trying to push myself to loosen up and explore things. And I see a lot of videos on YouTube, and they do really well about how to find your art style, or, you know, shortcuts to finding your art style. And I really believe it's just this kind of practice that helps you do that and start figuring out what you like to make. Okay, just a few more things to show you. I've got 3 paintings here that were a series, and I did these following one of Laura Horn's mini classes. I think this one might be called Abstract Explorations, and I'd never done anything like these before. I think I actually did these before I did the 100-day project. These were the first abstract paintings I'd ever done using acrylic paints, after spending a fair bit of time doing them on watercolors and playing a lot. And these just consumed me for an entire day, one weekend. I loved it. And again, I don't know if this is necessarily my style. It definitely heavily references Laura's style. There were things in here that I really liked, and this is why I like keeping them on my wall sometimes, is it's almost like a light glaze here from wiping paint off and seeing different layers from the mark making under here and some of the textures. So even though they're from a class, I won't sell them because they are heavily referenced by Laura's work, and that's not fair to her. They're such a good reference for me. It's where I was first starting to play with drips and understand how they worked. And I was using a combination of heavy body paints and fluid acrylics, Posca pens. It looks like there's some neo color here. So they're mixed media, but predominantly acrylic. And I had a lot of fun making those, which, maybe you're picking up on a trend right now, really started me on more exploration. So I don't think any of these are necessarily finished artworks, but I recently peeled the tape off all of them because they were kind of in process and I hadn't touched them in about, 9 to 12 months. And it surprised me when I took the tape off and could get these nice clear borders. I was like, oh, maybe they're more finished than I thought. These were all this was a leftover paint exercise that I chipped away at doing other paintings, probably from the 100-day project as well, and was just doing a little bit on it, every day while I was painting them to use up that paint and experiment. But some of these, like this one to me, has super interesting textures. Lots of drips, and then drips going this way. Sorry, terrible camera angle. Drips going this way as well, but really playing with kind of like the rusty, aged kind of vibe that I like. And this one unfortunately didn't have tape, so I don't have a nice clean border, but playing with different mark making tools and layering and getting the dark coming through the lighter paint that's over top and things like that. Super interesting. Now, closer to present day, some of the things that I'm playing with that I haven't put in my videos is I was playing a little bit with layering watercolors and gouache. This is inspired a little bit by Stan Kurth, who is I would say predominantly watercolor mixed media artist. I first heard about him because he was a juror at a local watercolor competition, the Northwest Watercolor Society, I believe. I was very interested in his art and started looking through it, and I was like, I want to try making some things like that. So yeah, I don't know if I love it, but it's very interesting to me, and I'm thinking it might inspire some other things. This is a value study using only black and white acrylics and different ways of making marks with the edges of palette knives and some of these other like weird tools that I have that I don't even think are for paint for some of them, but I like the bold brush strokes in this. These ones here are acrylic inks and Sumi ink. Yeah, there we go. I remembered right, Sumi ink. I had a lot of fun. There's a group of these. that were on, it was one large 22 by 30 sheet of watercolor paper. I had so much fun making these, and again, loving the bold brush strokes. And so I'm learning that's something that I'm really into, is like energetic brush strokes and things like that. Remarkably different from, bringing this back, remarkably different from detailed colored pencil, botanical detailed drawings. But I think these are just some of the keys to me starting to figure out what do I like, what kind of styles am I into, what materials do I like to play with. This is one of the last pieces that I'll show you, just kind of to hint at directions that I'm going in. I loved making this one. It's quite thick. This is on gessoed watercolor paper. It's acrylic paints and then also with some charcoal in here. Have I sealed it well? Yeah, it's not coming off on my fingers. And I did use, I was going to say I didn't use paint brushes, but I can see some brush marks here. So I obviously used brushes at some point. I wanted to play with different ways of applying paint with a palette knife. And these are the kind of textures I got and the layering. And I thought this was extremely satisfying to make. I love the colors. And so this one is definitely kind of up on my wall lately to inspire me. One final piece. I have a daughter, she's 12, and she's very artistic and loves to draw. She is very much into Pokemon and Sonic, illustration, animation, things like that. And so her and I are having a challenge where we chose a picture, some fan art online of Sobble, who's one of her favorite Pokemon, to draw and paint. And so she chose a different one. I chose this. So inspired by some fan art. And I was having so much trouble getting the colors right for Sobble. So there's still a lot of work to do here, but this is like a fun piece that I'm working on for my daughter. I started using gouache on this, which I really don't have a lot of experience with. This is not with the gouache pans that I'd used for some of the 100-day project paintings, but with tube gouache that I recently bought. Just being able to paint this with gouache, I was like, wow, this is going to be a whole nother learning curve. It definitely made me appreciate the complexity of switching art materials and having to relearn again. How do those materials work? What are the ins and outs of those? So anyway, that's kind of my art journey to date. Quite varied. And as you may have noticed, I keep a lot of different things going kind of at any one time. And I think it's just kind of how my brain works. I love to kind of stay challenged. I don't like getting bored. I like working on loose paper. I love, and in sketchbooks just to see progression. Oh, here's something I didn't show. I also have a lot of art books, and I've had some of them for years and haven't used them very much. So over the holiday break, I pulled out one of Jenna Rainey's watercolor books, and I thought, I've had this for so many years. I'm actually going to start trying to paint from it and just follow the lessons to a T. So I started doing that. I haven't painted trees very much. This was kind of fun. Painted my own version and then practicing her styles of brush strokes from that book to see what I liked. I did do some leftover paint pages here as backgrounds and to play with a little bit. This was fun. It was good to shake things up a little bit and to know, if I wanted to do watercolor flowers, could I do it? And do I enjoy doing it? I kind of enjoyed this one with an abstract background, but would I do a series of them? I don't know. But it was fun to practice them, knowing that I do want to explore more landscapes as well. So anywho, that's how I've been managing my art journey. I hope this video has been interesting for you, just to see my art journey so far over the last year and a half. I've got a lot of papers here with a lot of different art, and it's been really fun to look through it myself and to see the different things that I've tried as I am on this journey to figure out what I like doing. So, what's my takeaway from this for you? Well, I would say keep playing and trying different things. Like these 2 pages couldn't be any more different, right? If you can keep that play mindset, the curiosity mindset of, you know, what do I enjoy? What am I not enjoying? You know, here's some watercolor washes that I was playing with different granulation in paints. They were super fun. And definitely something that I'm going to repeat. But, you know, how will you know what you like if you don't experiment and play a little bit and take note of what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy? I feel like I've come a long way in loosening up and becoming braver in playing with new materials and playing with abstract art, which has been a very intentional path for me to try to challenge myself to loosen up and get away from things like this, because this is so much in my comfort zone, and it takes so much time that I find it a little bit less satisfying than being able to like knock out a few pages of experimenting on things. But I will probably come back to stuff like this because I enjoy it. In the back of my mind, I wonder, are there ways that I can combine my interest in doing really detailed pencil work or ink work with some of the abstract backgrounds and compositions? So I guess watch this space. I started this channel. I wish I had have started it 1.5 years ago to document more of this journey. But I started this channel because I was hoping to be able to show any of you out there that think that you may not be creative or are not artistic or talented, to show you that there's no pressure. I'm the only one that sees this stuff. I show my family, but then they're not super into it. They're definitely not into abstract art. My daughter, you know, appreciates this kinds of thing more, but even just having them not be into it has reinforced to me that it's only my opinion that matters on these. Am I enjoying it? Am I liking what I'm doing? Am I learning things? Are there new things that I want to play with? Do I know where I want to go next? And it's been a really fun year. When I was getting back into this and enrolled in Laura Horn's modern mixed media class, I was at the very start of a journey to recover from pretty severe burnout, work-induced burnout. And I think that making this art has helped me find myself again, and it's kind of saved my life in ways. It's brought back my confidence. It's just been great to start realizing that I am creative, that I'm capable of learning new things, and to not judge myself when I make stuff that looks like crap. And just have fun with it, you know. Experiment and learn to play again. I don't know if I was even very good at playing when I was a kid. And so it's been really fun, but also very vulnerable to try to relearn how to play and how to experiment as a middle-aged woman. And it's helped me find a new side to myself. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear about your creative journey so far. And if it's something that you want to start and would love to get back into painting or drawing, I hope that this has been helpful to you to see that yours is the only opinion that matters, and finding the things that you like to do and challenging yourself to learn new things and to renew that faith in yourself and your ability to have fun and know what you like and to make good decisions about that aren't anything to do with keeping anyone else happy. All these unexpected benefits from me that have come from making art that I would never have expected. Anywho, thank you so much for your time today. If you do have any questions or feedback on this video, please don't hesitate to put something in the comments. If there's been anything in this video that has inspired you, that you would like to see me make more content around, also let me know. because I'll say each week, I'm like, what do I do for this week's video? And what will my current audience and hopefully my future audience, what would they like to see and what would add value? So please let me know if there's anything that piqued your interest, if you'd like to see more of anything in particular. And every like and subscribe I get does help more people see my videos, which definitely helps in the big picture to help me grow my channel and get some more traction and hopefully be able to spend more and more time making content like this. Thanks, everyone.